The hotel receipt wasn't even hidden. $243 at Morton's Steakhouse, just sitting there in Gabriel's jacket pocket like he'd forgotten it was evidence. Or maybe he didn't care anymore. My name is Evelyn Sullivan. I'm 52 years old. I built a design business worth $4.2 million from a spare bedroom while pregnant with my first child. I can spot a lie in a contract from 3 pages away. But apparently I couldn't see my own husband's affair for 3 years. I found the receipt on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, I'd confronted him in our kitchen while the coffee was still brewing. "Morton's," I said. 2 steaks, $243. Gabriel, 54, and looking every day of it in that moment, went pale, then red, then settled on defensive. "We need to talk." 5 words that ended 27 years of marriage. Not an apology, not denial. Just confirmation that whatever I'd been suspecting for months was worse than I'd let myself imagine. He told me about the affair like he was reporting quarterly earnings. Her name was Jennifer. She worked in his department. It had been going on for a while. And then, the part where he looked me in the eye and said it, "You let yourself go after having kids. You became too focused on your parents and the business. I felt invisible in our marriage for years." Invisible. The word sat there between us like a weapon he'd sharpened for months. Maybe years. While I was building a business that supported our family, while I was paying my parents' expenses with my own money, while I was clipping coupons to keep groceries under $300 a month so we could save for the kids' futures. He'd been ordering $200 dinners for another woman and calling me the invisible one. I wanted to scream, to throw something. But 25 years of being the responsible daughter taught me something useful. Stay calm, gather evidence, strike when you're ready. "How long?" I asked. "It started recently, just a few months." That's when I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd already found. Text messages going back 3 years, anniversary wishes, inside jokes, plans made while I was at my parents' house fixing their furnace for the 4th time. He'd started this affair the same year I began paying for my parents' prescriptions. While I was sacrificing $47,000 for my family, he was building a secret life. But that wasn't the worst part. The bank statements showed systematic transfers to Jennifer's account. $23,000 over 8 months, each one under $5,000. Structured, calculated, designed to avoid triggering bank alerts. And every single dollar came from our youngest child's college fund. Not our joint account, not his personal savings, our baby's future. The account I'd been adding to since Marcus was born. Every birthday check from grandparents, every tax, refund we'd saved instead of taking vacations. Every $50 I transferred while working overtime because I believed we were building something together. $23,000. Gone. Not lost to bad investments or medical emergencies. Stolen. By their own father. To impress his girlfriend. Gabriel tried to explain. Something about feeling disconnected. About needing to feel appreciated. About how I never asked what he needed anymore. I stopped listening when he said, "You never." Because men who steal from their children don't get to lecture about emotional availability. I told him to leave. He did. And then, apparently, he called my sister Rebecca. 3 days later, my children showed up at my house. All 3 of them. Sarah, my oldest at 25, stood in my kitchen looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Marcus, the youngest at 22, couldn't make eye contact. Emma, my middle child at 25, kept touching my shoulder like she was checking if I was real. "We needed to see you," Sarah said. Her voice had that careful neutrality she used in court depositions. She was a junior attorney. She'd learned to mask everything. "Your father told you." "Everyone told us?" Emma glanced at Sarah. "Aunt Rebecca called. She wanted us to know before we heard it from you. Said we should understand both sides. Both sides. Like there were 2 valid perspectives on stealing from your own child." "I found the transfers," I said. I looked at Marcus. "He took $23,000 from your college fund." "For her." Marcus's face crumpled. 22 years old, and I watched him become 12 again. The age when he'd asked if we were rich because other kids had bigger houses. I told him no. We were comfortable because we were careful, because we planned. Lies. We were careful because his father was funding an affair. "I'm so sorry," I said. "You didn't do it." His voice cracked. Then he left the room because men in our family don't cry in front of people. Another thing Gabriel taught him. Sarah crossed her arms. That lawyer stance. Defensive. Why didn't anyone warn me? The question came out harsher than I meant. But I needed to know. 3 years. Someone must have seen something. I tried. The words landed like a slap. 2 years ago, Sarah said. I told you Dad seemed distant. Checked out. You said I was imagining things because you were busy with Grandma's hospital bills and a client deadline. You told me we'd talk later. She paused. We never did. I remembered. Vaguely. The conversation had happened in a parking lot after Sunday dinner. Sarah pulling me aside, me checking my phone, the parents calling about a prescription issue, a client crisis brewing. I told my daughter she was imagining things because I didn't have time for her truth. You've been emotionally unavailable to everyone except Grandma and Grandpa for years, Sarah said. Not cruel, just factual. The way she'd present evidence. We stopped trying to reach you. It was easier. The words sat there. True and devastating. I'd built a business, supported my parents, managed crises, fixed everyone's problems, and I'd lost my own children somewhere along the way. Emma left with Marcus to get dinner. Sarah stayed perched on my couch like she was at a client meeting. Emma will call you later, she said. She has something to tell you. About what? About Aunt Rebecca. Sarah stood. Just be ready. This is bigger than Dad's affair. 8 hours later, Emma called. Aunt Rebecca contacted Sarah 3 days ago, Emma said without preamble, after Dad called her, before any of us knew what happened. I put the phone on speaker and sat down. She called Sarah with an urgent family matter, told her there was a situation with you and Dad. That family needed to be prepared to support both of you through a difficult time. She called your sister before calling me? She was doing damage control. Emma's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Sarah said Aunt Rebecca kept saying she was shocked, devastated, that affairs happen but families survive, that you needed to consider forgiveness carefully because any scandal would affect everyone, especially since Grandma and Grandpa's health is declining and we'd need family unity more than ever. Family unity, the phrase my parents had used my entire life, usually when asking me to fix something. She wasn't sympathetic, Emma continued. She was controlling, managing the situation, like a PR crisis. What did Sarah say? That she needed to talk to you first. Aunt Rebecca did not like that. She got cold, said she hoped Sarah would remember who had always been there for this family. Rebecca, who defaulted on a $150,000 loan I'd co-signed 6 years ago, who'd never paid for a single one of our parents' expenses while I'd quietly covered $47,000, who was now positioning herself as the family's emotional center during my crisis. There's more, Emma said. Sarah thinks it's weird that Aunt Rebecca is so concerned about controlling your response, like she's protecting something. I stared at my laptop, at the bank statements still open, at the patterns I'd been studying for 3 days while my forensic accountant compiled findings. Gabriel had called Rebecca first, not to apologize, to get her on his side, and Rebecca had immediately begun managing the family narrative, not supporting me, managing me. Mom? Emma's voice pulled me back. Are you okay? I'm figuring something out. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a sister who'd spent 3 days coordinating responses before I even knew there was a crisis. The question was why? What did Rebecca gain from keeping Gabriel's affair quiet? From pushing me toward forgiveness before I could get angry? My emotional absence had isolated me from my children when I needed them most. I'd been so busy fixing everyone's problems that I'd missed the warning signs in my own life. But I was seeing clearly now, and Rebecca's attempt to control the situation meant she had something to hide, something worse than I'd discovered yet. The first divorce attorney's office smelled like vanilla air freshener and compromise. I understand you're angry, she said, sliding a pamphlet across her mahogany desk, but mediation might be the healthier path, for you and the children. I'd brought her bank statements showing Gabriel had stolen $23,000 from our son's college fund, emails proving a 3-year affair, evidence of systematic deception. She wanted to talk about feelings. He committed financial fraud against his own child. I know this is painful. Her voice had that therapeutic softness people use when they think you're hysterical. But litigation can be so adversarial. Have you considered what extended conflict might do to your family relationships? My family relationships. The ones where my sister was already coordinating damage control with my husband while I was still processing the betrayal. I fired her 3 days later and hired Patricia Chen, a litigator known for aggressive divorce cases and a complete absence of hand-holding. Good, Patricia said when I showed her the bank statements. Gather everything, every receipt, every statement, every text message. We're building a case, not a therapy session. While I was organizing 7 years of financial records, Rebecca called. not to ask how I was doing, to tell me I was handling this wrong. "Mom and Dad are devastated," she said. "They asked me to talk to you. Before you do something you'll regret." "Something like what?" "Like destroying your marriage over one mistake. Gabriel made a choice, but you're making one too. And yours affects the whole family." I wanted their support. They wanted damage control. That's an important distinction. Within 2 days, my parents sent letters. Actual handwritten letters, because email wasn't serious enough for the lecture they needed to deliver. Divorce is shameful. Family problems should be kept private. You have 3 children to think about. We raised you better than this. Don't throw away 27 years because you're being dramatic. The same parents who'd stayed married through decades of their own difficulties, who'd made family unity their religion and silence their sacrament. They were invoking those values now, not to support me, to control me. I wrote back. One line. "You've always taken Rebecca's side. Remember the loan. The $150,000 business loan I'd co-signed 6 years ago because they'd pressured me for 3 months straight, despite Gabriel's warnings, despite every logical reason to refuse. Rebecca's business failed within 18 months. My credit score dropped from 780 to 486. We couldn't buy a bigger house for our growing family because my sister's dreams had destroyed my financial standing. And when it collapsed, they'd blame me for not being more supportive." 2 days after my letter, Rebecca posted on Facebook, "So sad to see people give up on marriage at the first sign of trouble. Commitment means fighting for what you love, not running when it gets hard. Praying for families who've forgotten what for better or worse means." 63 likes, 14 comments about the importance of perseverance. She turned my husband's theft into a moral lesson with herself as the righteous teacher. Then the extended family started calling. Aunts, cousins, people I saw twice a year at holidays. Same script, different voices. "You're destroying the family. Think of your parents. Rebecca is so worried. Can't you just try counseling?" I wanted family. They wanted me quiet. Not the same thing. 3 weeks of this. Daily messages. Voicemails about forgiveness. Texts invoking God and commitment and family values. All of them acting like I was the crisis, not Gabriel's 3-year affair funded by our son's future. I broke down to Lisa, a friend I'd known for 12 years, vented about Rebecca's manipulation, how she was coordinating the family against me, how she'd sided with Gabriel before even asking my side. Lisa listened, sympathized, asked thoughtful questions, then reported every word back to my parents, reframed as me being vindictive. The message they sent was the angriest I'd ever seen from them. "We raised you better than this bitterness. You're ungrateful for everything we sacrificed. Rebecca is trying to hold this family together while you're tearing it apart. We're ashamed of who you've become." That's when I understood. I could have evidence, could have facts, could have documented proof of betrayal, didn't matter. They'd already chosen whose version to believe. So I hired a forensic accountant. Marcus Webb was 63, methodical, and completely uninterested in family drama. He wanted bank statements and account access. I gave him everything. 4 weeks later, he called me into his office. "Your husband was careless." Marcus spread printouts across his conference table. These transfers between his accounts and Jennifer's, they're not just affair expenses. I leaned forward. He helped her move money. Repeatedly. Through accounts that match vendor profiles in your husband's company database. Jennifer works in accounts payable. Gabriel's a regional finance manager with vendor payment system access. He tapped a highlighted section. "This isn't an affair. It's embezzlement with a paper trail." 47 transactions over 18 months. Patterns suggesting Gabriel had helped Jennifer conceal funds from their employer by routing transfers through fake vendor accounts. They hadn't just been sleeping together. They'd been committing fraud. "This is federal," Marcus said. "The amounts, the interstate banking systems, the vendor fraud. Your attorney needs to contact authorities." Patricia made the call that afternoon. I joined a support group that week at the community center. 4 other women dealing with divorce and financial betrayal. We met in a room that smelled like coffee and shared wounds. I told them about the college fund theft. They told me about hidden accounts and forged signatures. We recognized each other. For the first time in months, I wasn't alone in understanding what systematic betrayal felt like. My cousin Jennifer called 3 weeks into discovery. Not my sister's Jennifer, my father's sister's daughter, who'd always stayed neutral. "I shouldn't be telling you this." Her voice was tight. "But Rebecca's been poisoning them against you for years. Little comments about your business, how you prioritize work over family, how you've changed since you got successful. Why are you telling me now?" because what she's doing isn't right. But I can't get involved publicly. My parents would... She trailed off. I'm sorry. I just thought you should know. So the pattern went back years. Rebecca planting seeds, building a narrative. So when this moment came, everyone would believe I was the villain. During discovery, Patricia's subpoenas came back. Gabriel's phone records, his email archives, including his work email account where he'd conducted personal business because he'd apparently believed his position made him untouchable. Your husband was an idiot, Patricia said, scrolling through messages on her laptop. He kept everything, including emails from 18 months ago between Gabriel and Rebecca. I read them in Patricia's office with my hands shaking. Gabriel had confided in Rebecca during a family gathering, told her about the affair, asked for advice, not from his wife, from my sister. And Rebecca's response wasn't shock, wasn't confrontation, wasn't telling me, "You deserve happiness, Gabriel. Evelyn's been checked out for years." Honestly, I think she's planning to leave you anyway. Take everything in the divorce. You should protect yourself. Complete lies. I'd never planned to leave, never even considered it before finding that receipt. But Rebecca had given Gabriel permission, justification, a narrative where I was the villain and he was the victim protecting himself. Keep seeing Jennifer, Rebecca had written. Evelyn's so focused on her business and our parents, she probably won't even notice. And if she does, you have every right to find someone who appreciates you. Email after email. Rebecca encouraging the affair's continuation, feeding Gabriel's resentment, poisoning him against me. But the last email was the one that made everything clear. When Mom and Dad's estate gets settled, we'll need to be united about it. Evelyn's already wealthy from her business. She doesn't need their money like I do. I'll need your support to make them see that. Family helps family. There it was, the real conspiracy. Rebecca hadn't just enabled Gabriel's affair, she'd weaponized it, used his guilt and my expected anger to position herself as his ally. So when my parents' estate came up, parents whose health was declining, whose finances I'd been given limited access to years ago when they'd asked me to help, organize things, Gabriel would side with Rebecca. The affair wasn't just betrayal, it was recruitment. My sister had seen an opportunity in my husband's weakness and turned it into a strategy. Keep the affair going, keep me angry, keep Gabriel grateful to her for her support, then leverage that alliance when it mattered. To secure an inheritance from parents who'd given Rebecca everything while telling me to be self-sufficient. I'd spent 3 years paying $47,000 for my parents' prescriptions and home repairs, never mentioning it, never asking for help, while Rebecca was plotting to take whatever they had left, and the sisters' frantic attempts to control my response after I discovered the affair. That wasn't about protecting Gabriel or preserving family unity. It was about hiding this conspiracy before I found the emails, before I realized Rebecca had been manipulating all of us. I thought about my father's older sister, the successful one who'd cut everyone off, the ghost he'd always feared I'd become. They'd spent 40 years making sure I wouldn't abandon them, pressuring me to co-sign loans, expecting me to fix problems, teaching me that being responsible meant being available. And while I was proving I wasn't the abandoning daughter, Rebecca was spending the inheritance and turning my marriage into a tool. I wanted their love. Rebecca wanted their money, but she'd already spent it. And now she needed me silent so no one would check where it had gone. That's not family. That's fraud with a bloodline. 6 months gave me time. Time with Marcus Webb, my forensic accountant who turned 7 years of family finances into a prosecutor's dream and a sister's nightmare. Time to file incorporation papers for the Family Financial Abuse Recovery Network. Time to stop hoping they'd choose me and start building something for women whose families never would. Rebecca showed up at my office on a Tuesday. No appointment. Just walked past my assistant like she owned the building. Mom and Dad can't afford their medications, she said, standing in my doorway, not sitting. This was supposed to be quick. Their savings are almost gone. We need to help. Like she'd contributed a single dollar in 3 years. I pulled out my leather ledger, the one I'd been keeping for 17 years, slid it across the desk. Page 47, I said, through page 92. She didn't open it. $47,000, I continued. Their prescriptions, the furnace repair, the roof, the medical copays, every month for 3 years. Cash from my business because my credit's been destroyed since I co-signed your loan. All documented, all paid. While you contributed what exactly? Her face went red. They're our parents. Yes, and I've been taking care of them. Quietly. The way you've been taking their money. Quietly. She left without the ledger. Forgot why she came apparently once she realized I had receipts. 3 days later, my mother called. Family meeting, Sunday, their house. Be there. Not a request, a summons. The kind they'd been issuing my whole life, expecting me to show up and fix whatever crisis Rebecca had created this time. I went, because I wanted to see it. The intervention they thought they were staging. 12 people in my parents' living room, aunts, uncles, second cousins I saw at weddings, all of them sitting there like a jury that had already decided. My mother opened. We raised you to value family. My father nodded, looking tired, looking old. We didn't raise you to abandon people when they need you. Rebecca sat beside them, perfect posture, concerned expression, the dutiful daughter routine she'd perfected over 40 years. Family forgives, she said. Soft voice, reasonable. Gabriel made a mistake, but you're making a choice, and your choice affects all of us. I wanted support. They wanted control. Not the same thing. Drop the divorce, my mother said, and help your parents. Stop being selfish. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Because that's what interventions do. Create consensus. Make the target feel isolated. Alone. Except I wasn't alone anymore. I had evidence. I opened my laptop. $47,000. I turned the screen to show bank statements, withdrawals, receipts. That's what I paid for mom and dad over 3 years. Their medications, their home repairs, their medical co-pays, every transaction documented. I pulled up the credit report next. 486. That's my credit score. Because I co-signed Rebecca's loan 6 years ago. We couldn't buy a bigger house for our kids because Rebecca's dreams destroyed my financial standing. Silence now, the jury reconvening. Gabriel didn't make a mistake, I said. Turning to Rebecca, he made 47 deliberate choices. Every transfer from Marcus's college fund, every structured transaction under $5,000 to avoid detection. And you knew about it. I pulled up the emails, the ones subpoenaed during discovery. Gabriel and Rebecca, 18 months of conversation. You encouraged the affair, I said, reading from the screen. Evelyn's been checked out for years. You deserve happiness. She's planning to leave you anyway and take everything. I looked at her. Complete lies. But you needed Gabriel on your side, for when mom and dad's estate gets settled. My mother's face went pale. What are you talking about? Read the last email, I said, turning the laptop toward them. Rebecca promised Gabriel she'd make sure I didn't get their money, because her business failed and mine succeeded, because she needed the inheritance and I didn't. Rebecca stood. That's not... 4.2 million. I cut her off. That's my business valuation. Want to see the assessment? I pulled up another file. Here's the incorporation papers for the Family Financial Abuse Recovery Network, a nonprofit I'm starting to help women whose families financially exploited them. I'm committing $100,000 as seed funding. I looked at my parents. Money you'll never see, because I'm done being your retirement plan. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. There's something else you should know, I said, turning to Rebecca. When mom and dad gave me access to their accounts 5 years ago, I maintained it, because their health kept declining, because someone needed to organize things. I pulled up the final spreadsheet, the one Marcus had compiled. 5 years of account activity. $180,000, I said. That's what Rebecca withdrew from your accounts over 6 years. She told you it was for necessary expenses. Medical bills, home repairs, emergency costs. I turned the laptop again, showing the trace Marcus had compiled. $17,000 for a kitchen remodel in her house, $23,000 for a vacation to Europe, $41,000 in cash, withdrawals with no documentation, department store charges, restaurant bills, car payments. I looked at Rebecca. Want me to keep going? My sister's face had gone from red to white, bloodless, like watching someone realize they'd been caught. Not just exposed, cornered. You sabotaged my marriage, I said. Voice steady, cold. Poisoned my husband against me, encouraged an affair that destroyed my family, all to secure an inheritance that you already spent. The room was silent. 12 people watching the moral high ground collapse. You can take care of them yourselves now, I said, standing, closing the laptop. I'm done sacrificing myself for people who only valued me as a resource. I walked out, left them sitting there with the evidence, with the truth they'd spent decades avoiding. Nobody followed me. 4 days later, my father called. I need to tell you something, he said, not apologizing, explaining. There's a difference. When I was young, my older sister was the successful one, made good money, built a life. He paused. She cut us all off when we asked for help. Just stop talking to the family. I waited. You remind me of her, he said. Always have. Smart, driven, independent, and I've been terrified my whole life that you'd do the same thing. The pattern clicking into place. 40 years of pressure, of making me responsible for family unity, of pushing me toward Rebecca even when she was destroying me. We tried to keep you close, he continued, made you feel responsible, pushed you to help your sister, to be there for us, because we were scared of losing you. He wasn't apologizing, just explaining why he'd sacrificed me on the altar of his own fear. You created what you were afraid of, I said. I know. No, you don't. My voice was calm, final. You were so scared I'd become the daughter who abandons you that you turned me into her, by making me the resource instead of the relationship, by choosing Rebecca every single time, by letting her exploit me while you watched. Silence on the line. I can't have a relationship with you until you stop enabling Rebecca financially, I said, and agree to family counseling, not to fix me, to address the dysfunction you created. That's not fair. It's the only offer you're getting. I hung up. The family trauma went back generations. My father's fear of abandonment, his sister's rejection, the pattern of making the successful child responsible for everyone else's failures. He'd projected it all onto me, turned his unresolved wounds into my responsibility, made me prove for 40 years that I wasn't the abandoning daughter while they systematically took everything I had. And I'd let them. Because proving I wasn't her meant sacrificing myself. But his fear had created the exact outcome he'd spent decades trying to prevent. I'd finally become the daughter who walks away. Not because I was cruel, because survival doesn't negotiate with people who see you as a bank account with a pulse. Some generational patterns break themselves, through the sheer weight of their own destruction. I wasn't fixing this one anymore. They'd built it. They could live in it. I was done. Patricia's office smelled like expensive leather and justified rage. They're claiming your business is marital property, she said, sliding the filing across her desk, arguing you built it during the marriage with marital resources, so he deserves half. The husband's attorney had positioned it perfectly. Evelyn prioritized work over family, built a $4.2 million empire while her marriage crumbled. Only fair she share the proceeds. I wanted partnership. He wanted plunder. Patricia opened her briefcase. Their mistake was giving us discovery time. 8 years of emails. Every instance where the husband had discouraged business expansion. Told me clients were too demanding. Suggested I scale back because the kids needed me home. Said growing the business would put too much strain on our family, while stealing from that same family to fund his affair. Better, Patricia said. We have evidence he helped Jennifer hide embezzled funds. The federal prosecutor confirmed it yesterday. 47 transactions over 18 months. Your husband wasn't just cheating. He was committing wire fraud. The divorce became background noise to the criminal investigation. 8 months of prosecutors building their case while I built my new life. Support group meetings at the community center every Tuesday. Incorporation papers for the Family Financial Abuse Recovery Network. Learning to sleep alone without checking if he'd come home. Then his employer terminated him. Made it public. Regional finance manager. Fired amid federal investigation. I didn't celebrate, just noted it in my ledger. Another consequence he'd earned. The divorce took 2 years to finalize. Grand jury proceedings, plea negotiations, lawyers arguing over assets while federal agents argued over charges. Judge Morrison reviewed the evidence for 3 hours before delivering the settlement. The house, valued at $675,000, and $485,000 from the husband's retirement fund. Normally 50%, the judge said. But given evidence of depleted college savings and systematic financial misconduct, I'm awarding you 63% of marital retirement assets. 63%. Because stealing from your own children gets you penalized in family court, even when you're already facing federal charges. The husband sat across the courtroom looking 10 years older than 56, unemployed, disgraced, facing federal charges that could send him to prison. I felt nothing. Not victory, not vindication. Just the quiet satisfaction of math finally working in my favor. First thing I did with the settlement? Restored Marcus's college fund. $23,000. The exact amount his father had stolen. Not for me. For the principle that some thefts get corrected. 14 months into the divorce process, my phone lit up with a notification. Bankruptcy filing. Rebecca Sullivan. $340,000 in total debt, including the $150,000 loan I'd co-signed 6 years ago. The loan that destroyed my credit score from 780 to 486. The loan that prevented us from buying a bigger house. The loan the parents had pressured me for 3 months to sign because family helps family. All of it. Released. I sat in my office staring at the filing. My sister had spent 6 years dodging that debt while I absorbed the damage. Now she declared bankruptcy, wiped it clean, and inadvertently freed me in the process. The irony was almost funny. Almost. The parents called 2 days later, not to apologize, to explain they needed to support the sister now because she had nothing. We assumed you'd understand, my mother said. I did understand. I understood they'd realized I wouldn't be their backup plan anymore. 3 weeks after the bankruptcy filing, Sarah showed up at my office, not as the distant daughter who'd watched me crumble, as someone who'd been documenting everything. I've been keeping records, she said, pulling out a folder. Every time Aunt Rebecca manipulated family events, every time she positioned herself as the victim, every conversation where Grandma and Grandpa chose her version over yours. 2 years of documentation, emails, text screenshots, recorded phone calls where my sister had actively poisoned the family against me. Why? I asked. Because someone needed to see the pattern. Sarah's voice was steady, professional, and because I was wrong. When I tried to warn you about Dad 2 years ago and you brushed me off, I should have pushed harder. I should have made you listen. This wasn't reconciliation. This was an attorney presenting evidence, showing me she'd learned to protect people by documenting truth. We didn't hug, didn't process the years of distance, just acknowledged what we'd both lost, and started figuring out what we could build. Emma and Marcus called within the week, separate conversations, same message. We're glad you're free, Emma said. We watched them drain you for years. We just didn't know how to say it. The support group grew. 4 women, then 12, then 20. We met every Tuesday in the community center's basement, processing betrayals that looked different but felt the same. I started co-facilitating a year after my own divorce began. Learned that helping women name their exploitation was more healing than any therapy session I'd attended. Journalists reached out through the nonprofit's website 18 months in, researching family financial abuse for a regional publication. Patricia reviewed the interview request. Anonymous, she said. No names, no identifying details. But your story? It's exactly what other women need to hear. The article ran 3 weeks later. Family financial betrayal. When those who should protect you become predators. I didn't tell anyone I was the anonymous subject, didn't need to. The math was too specific, the patterns too familiar. Community members who knew my family started asking questions. Quiet inquiries about where the parents' money had gone, why the responsible daughter had cut them off, whether the sister's version of events held up under scrutiny. 18 months after the confrontation, my parents sent a letter, handwritten, formal, asking me to help them understand what happened, offering to try counseling, not apologizing, just offering to let me explain my grievance. I wrote back, 1 paragraph. I'll consider a relationship after you complete 6 months of family counseling and stop enabling Rebecca financially. Those are my terms. They're not negotiable. They never responded. The business got recognized. Design publication profiling women entrepreneurs over 50 who'd built companies from nothing. My photo ran alongside the article. My story told without mentioning the husband who'd tried to claim half or the family who'd seen it as their safety net. I hired Sarah part-time. Small project at first. Testing whether we could work together without the weight of everything unspoken crushing us. We could. Slowly. Professionally. Finding our way back through design mock-ups and client meetings instead of forced emotional conversations. 2 years after the separation, the husband called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. The prosecutors want prison time, he said. No greeting, no small talk, just desperation. If you testified about our marriage, about how the stress affected me, about the financial pressure from your family. He wanted me to save him. After stealing from our son, after 3 years of lying, after helping his girlfriend embezzle funds, he wanted me to be the resource he'd always seen me as. Please, he said, we could try again. After this is over, start fresh. I wanted to laugh, to scream, to ask if he genuinely believed I was that broken. Instead, I said 1 sentence. You made your choices, now you get to live with them. Then I hung up, blocked his number, went back to work. The support group expanded to 40 women, became a formal program within the Family Financial Abuse Recovery Network. We secured funding, hired a part-time coordinator, started partnering with legal aid organizations, I planned the public launch for a Tuesday evening at the community center, sent invitations to local women's organizations, mental health professionals, attorneys who specialized in family law. 3 weeks before the event, the husband's plea deal was finalized. 5 years probation, restitution, no prison time. His girlfriend got 18 months. I didn't attend the sentencing, didn't need to. The outcome was already written in the pattern of choices he'd spent 3 years making. Launch night arrived with 63 women packed into the community center's main room. More than I'd expected. More than I'd hoped. I stood at the front of the room looking at faces I recognized from support groups and faces I'd never seen before. Women carrying betrayals they hadn't named yet. Women looking for language to describe what had been done to them. "My name is Evelyn," I said, "and I spent 40 years proving I wasn't the daughter who abandons people." The room went quiet. I built a business worth $4.2 million, paid $47,000 for my parents' expenses over 3 years, co-signed my sister's $150,000 loan, and absorbed the damage when she defaulted. And while I was sacrificing everything to prove my worth, my husband was stealing from our children and my family was positioning themselves to take whatever I had left. I looked at the faces watching me. Women who understood, who'd lived their own versions. "Your worth isn't defined by people who could not see it," I said. "It's defined by what you build after they prove they never intended to." The applause was quiet, respectful, but what mattered wasn't the sound. It was the recognition. Women seeing themselves in my story, finding permission to name their own betrayals, learning that survival doesn't require forgiveness from people who never earned it. I'd spent 2.5 years becoming someone new. Not the responsible daughter, not the devoted wife, not the supportive sister, just someone who'd survived deliberate destruction and decided other women deserved the same clarity. The room saw me, really saw me. For the first time in my life, that was enough.